家人们，我今天收到这个电费单，我整个人都震惊了啊！竟然要2600多，我一个人住一个人啊！我11月的电费只有140多，结果我12月2600多。
This happened 3 months ago, and people in Shanghai thought that electricity prices had gone up. But then the local government came out to clarify that they hadn't raised the prices. Netizens started mocking them, saying if the electricity prices didn't go up, then the meters must be running too fast. But this kind of talk was silenced online, and you could only find 2 pieces of news on Google. It made people wonder, is there some bigger conspiracy going on behind the scenes? In fact, 2 months later, the insider's information was revealed. People from government departments revealed in private chats that local governments had indeed sped up the meters for water, electricity, and gas, increasing the rates anywhere from 5% to as much as 50%, all to help cover the local government's operating expenses. Right now, local governments are broke, and the money printed by the central government hasn't been distributed yet. Since local governments are so short of funds, how much money does the central government need to print to rescue the local situation? According to the budget report released by the National People's Congress on March 13th this year, the total fiscal expenditure of the Chinese government is about 49.5 trillion yuan. After reducting the central fiscal revenue of 20 trillion yuan in 2022, there is still a shortfall of 29.5 trillion yuan. So this figure is basically the amount required by the money printing exercise that the central government must complete this year. However, insiders estimate an even higher figure. They believe that based on the central fiscal revenue and provincial revenues in 2022, as well as expenditures, at least 50 trillion yuan will need to be printed this year. This amounts to half of China's GDP of over 100 trillion yuan required to make up for the deficits of local governments. Moreover, this number only resolves the official deficits, not including the debts of local urban investment corporations or the shadow banking sector. So how does the Chinese government intend to print all this money? As stated in the Central Economic Work Conference report, the central bank employs a mix of tools such as optimizing deficit financing, special bonds, and interest cancellation to secure funding. Deficit financing refers to the central government borrowing money from the central bank, while special bonds involve the central government issuing bonds to the market. For instance, the issuance of 750 billion special national bonds by the Ministry of Finance on December 12th last year can be categorized as a type of a special bond. This falls under the central government issuing bonds to the central bank or domestic and foreign social institutions for financing purpose. Loan interest cancellation in this case refers to the central government's request for the central bank to waive the interest payments on the funds it has borrowed in the past. This implies that the amount of money the central government has borrowed from the central bank is already quite significant. So significant, in fact, that even considering canceling the interest payments is deemed worthwhile, as the interest alone constitutes a considerable sum. Let's examine the current amount of money printed by the central bank. In 2022, the broad money supply stood at 266 trillion yuan, marking an increase of 28 trillion yuan from 2021. This indicates that China's total money printing volume in 2022 reached 28 trillion yuan. In January 2023, the M2 money supply was 7 trillion yuan higher than in December, meaning that the amount of new money in January constituted a quarter of the total new amount in 2022. The year-on-year growth rate of M2 can be considered the money printing speed. At the end of February, the broad money balance was 275.52 trillion yuan, showing a year-on-year increase of 12.9%. This growth rate not only set a new high post-pandemic, but also marked a new high in the past 7 years. If this growth persists, M2 will surpass 300 trillion yuan by the end of 2023. The first quarter of 2023 has concluded, and the Ministry of Finance official website has published the data for January and February 2023. Among the 13 main sources of government tax revenue, 9 experienced a clear year-on-year decline. Land, real estate tax revenue, import tax revenue, tariffs, and securities transaction stamp taxes saw significant decreases. Consequently, China's general public budget revenue fell by 1.2% year-on-year, and tax revenue dropped by 3.4%. If it weren't for the considerable increase in various fines, penalties, and administrative fees, the fiscal revenue situation in the first quarter would be even more dire. Facing a challenging fiscal situation, the Chinese government cannot halt money printing and must do so on a large scale. However, a set of financial data released by the People's Bank of China on February 10th for January suggests that the money printed did not enter the real economy but remained idle within the financial system. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics reveal that the consumer price index for March increased by only 1% year-on-year, lower than the anticipated 1.9%. Simultaneously, the producer price index for March declined by 1.4% year-on-year, worse than the expected negative 1.3%. These two sets of data imply that the cost of living barely increased, rising by only 1%, while production cost fell by 1.4%. Despite the massive stimulus from the central bank, both production and consumption sectors remain lackluster. By examining the real estate market, we can determine if the central bank's money has entered this system. In March 2023, the average price of new homes in 100 cities was 16,174 yuan per square meter, in line with January's data. The average price of second-hand homes in 100 cities in March 2023 was 15,848 yuan per square meter, a month-on-month decrease of 0.05% and a year-on-year decline of 1.12%. However, in many areas, the actual drop in housing prices is significant when attempting to sell a house. It can be said that the current real estate market has not yet been affected. As for the stock market, as of the close on March 30, 2023, the Shanghai Composite Index stood at 3,261.25 points, unchanged from the end of January, and the Shenzhen Component Index closed at 11,651.83, down from January. The overall stock market did not rise. With so much money printed, there has been no increase in prices in the real economy, and both housing prices and stock prices have fallen. The money printed by China's central bank has not led to increases in prices, production indices, or the stock and housing markets. In economics, there is a principle called the Fisher equation, MV equal PQ. M is the money supply, V is the velocity of money circulation, P is the comprehensive price index that includes real estate, stock market, basic consumption, and services, and Q is the total quantity of goods. M mainly looks at the broad money supply. Now that the money supply has increased significantly, the quantity of goods and services has not risen rapidly due to the pandemic, and prices have not risen or even continued to decline. As a result, the velocity of money circulation has decreased significantly. What's even more frightening is that the entire Chinese society has lost confidence in the economy, with everyone reducing leverage and paying off housing loans, no longer borrowing so much money. Ordinary workers' wages need to be paid daily. Among wholesalers and retailers, unless they have a close relationship and strong capabilities, transactions are cash-based with no credit. If migrant workers don't receive their wages for a day, they won't come to the construction site the next day. Under these circumstances, China's economy, consumption, and production may face collapse, with virtually no solution. However, the Chinese government is skilled at hoodwinking the public and raising money. Currently, the central government is implementing the most lenient monetary policy for cities, businesses, and individuals across the country. Almost everyone without overdue loans can obtain more loans from banks, aiming to encourage people to borrow and spend the money printed by the central bank, thus stimulating the local economy. At the same time, the Chinese Communist Party is relaxing the limits and scope of pension contributions, raising the maximum annual personal pension contribution from 12,000 yuan to a higher level. The government has found that many people are willing to pay the full annual pension contribution in one lump sum. So by raising the limit, they collect more money. However, after people put their money into the system, the purchasing power of these funds may decrease by 90% in 10 years due to inflation. In a local context, governments, public institutions, state-owned enterprises, and central enterprises wielding power will collaborate establish tacit agreements, and set traps for each other during the process of filling financial gaps. They will use all available financial instruments, and the unspoken rules will become increasingly enigmatic. Corruption will increase, as will shoddy construction projects. Take, for example, a case of setting traps among government organizations. In February, Guangxi's Power Supply Bureau set a notice of overdue payments and power disconnection to the autonomous region's Public Security Bureau, urging them to pay overdue electricity fees and breach of contract penalties totaling over 480,000 yuan. This news became a big joke for the Communist Party and was censored in the media. However, the fact that this scandal was leaked was in itself a setup. There are two possible traps. One is a joint performance by the Guangxi Provincial Public Security Bureau and the Nanning City Power Supply Bureau, urging the Guangxi provincial government to allocate electricity fees to the Public Security Bureau. The other possibility is a joint performance by the Guangxi provincial government and the two affiliated institutions to urge the central government to quickly transfer this year's funding to support the provincial government's operation. Both possibilities might be in play. Otherwise, how could local governments allow this embarrassing news to leak? This is the so-called setting of traps among each other. So why does printing more money lead to more corruption and shoddy construction projects? We will explain in detail that under the current financial situation, the money printed by the central bank is not willingly lent to ordinary people by banks because they are already heavily in debt and have a high probability of default. Many enterprises are also unwilling to apply for loans because the market is depressed, and the selling prices of products after loan-financed production expansion are very low, leading to losses. Therefore, it is challenging for the central bank to issue loans through commercial banks. The Chinese government has chosen the path of fiscal expansion, directly investing in local infrastructure projects. However, the return on investment for infrastructure projects in China is abysmal. With an investment of 10 yuan hardly return a single yuan. Why do they still do this? Because only such infrastructure investments can continue to allow officials at all levels to profit from them. As for the quality of infrastructure construction, it doesn't matter. That's why China has many broken bridges, some without even steel reinforcements. And according to the Central Economic Work Conference report, as long as local governments support new energy, pensions, and real estate, they can receive money from the central government. Therefore, we see that corruption and shoddy construction projects will increase. In such a terrible situation in 2023, the RMB has been rapidly depreciating against the US dollar, with the previous exchange rate of 6.7 RMB to $1 falling to 6.87 RMB. This round of RMB depreciation is actually related to the decline in China's export surplus and the decrease in foreign exchange earnings. The price of China's maritime shipping to the United States has fallen to 10% of previous levels. And many major Chinese export ports, such as Shanghai, Zhoushan, Ningbo, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and Qingdao, are ranked among the top 20 global ports. Now these ports are filled with empty containers, indicating that China's exports have basically halted. This is reflected in the renminbi exchange rate, which continues to fall. At present, the Chinese central bank is printing a large amount of money and continuously cutting interest rates and reserve requirement ratios. Experts predict that even if the increase in the money supply does not trigger a response in the foreign exchange market, given the current economic situation, the official renminbi exchange rate may break 7 or 8, while the black market exchange rate may break 10 or even 20. Economists forecast that by the end of this year, the money in the hands of Chinese people will depreciate by at least 20%, and in a more pessimistic prediction, by more than 30%. According to data released by the People's Bank of China, in 1993, the M2 money supply was a mere 3.5 trillion yuan. Fast forward 30 years, and it has skyrocketed to 266.4 trillion yuan, a staggering 75-fold increase, with an average annual growth rate of 15.5%. Surprisingly, this exponential growth has not translated into a proportional rise in workers' incomes, but has been sufficient to cause currency depreciation. So where has all this money gone? Data from the People's Bank of China reveals that in 2022, renminbi loans surged by 21.3 trillion yuan. However, new loans in the residential sector accounted for only 3.8 trillion yuan, with the remaining 17.5 trillion yuan being absorbed by enterprises and government departments. In essence, the addition of 28 trillion yuan in currency led to 21.3 trillion yuan in loans, predominantly channeled by state-owned enterprises or public institutions connected to the government. Following a series of economic cycles, these funds were converted into personal, corporate, and government fiscal deposits. Unfortunately, the majority of ordinary citizens and small to medium-sized enterprises did not reap any benefits from the newly printed 28 trillion yuan. Instead, it was the already affluent large state-owned enterprises and public institutions that captured most of the funds.